Good evening to you and welcome to The Story. I'm Evan Watson in for Blair Best tonight. If you're a frequent crosser of the I-5 bridge between Portland and Vancouver, you've likely been dreading the start of tolling on the bridge sometime in the spring of 2026. But this week, that timeline changed, and it is a bit of good news on this Friday. It's our big story tonight. Okay, I'll level with you. The tolls are still coming to the I-5 bridge, so don't get too excited. But the start date has been pushed back a full year to the spring of 2027. The planned tolls are expected to raise up to $1.6 billion to help fund the replacement of the twin bridges over the Columbia. In total, the project is currently expected to cost somewhere between $5 and $7.5 billion, with Oregon, Washington, and the federal government picking up the rest of the tab. The Interstate Bridge Replacement team is planning on pre-completion tolling, meaning tolls will start on the current bridge while the new one is being built. The Oregon and Washington Transportation Commissions were supposed to set finalized toll rates this summer, with tolling cameras set to be installed in the following months for that spring 2026 start date. But at an Oregon Transportation Commission meeting yesterday, the bridge team said the schedule needs to be bumped back a year because other parts of the project are taking too long.
Probably the key thing I want to point out here is the environmental phase. We are nearing the end of it. But one thing you'll also note that it is longer than we anticipated.
The federal environmental review started in the summer of 2022, and at the time, they expected it to be finished by last year. Now we're looking at early 2026 to get a record of decision. That's sort of the final green light to start construction.
That includes the work for pre-completion tolling, and the infrastructure to support that is also hinging upon that record of decision date.
That infrastructure is the tolling cameras. Installing those counts as part of the construction, and they have to wait for a record of decision to get that started. There's also a toll traffic and revenue study in progress, but at the meeting yesterday, they said toll revenue projections are not expected to be ready until January, and without that data, setting toll rates would be far from ideal. But even though tolling is delayed until 2027, the overall project timeline appears unchanged, and we're learning more about that as well. The team still hopes to start construction early next year, although it's not entirely clear when it would wrap up. The project's website says construction of the bridge will take 5 to 7 years, so that would mean the new one would be done by 2033. During this week's meeting, they mentioned a 15-year timeline for the entire project, which includes extensive changes and upgrades along more than 4 miles of the freeway near the bridge. But the bridge work will come first.
It would take a lot less if we could actually close the interstate and build the whole program. But I think when I asked the director if we could do that, he said no, and he's right. So we need to maintain three through lanes of traffic in each direction during construction to keep the goods and services and people moving through this corridor. And that means you have to break them up into packages that are constructible, that are biddable, that can maintain competition, that manage interfaces in a way that minimizes our risk, and quite frankly, meets some reasonable level of cash flow to build a program.
One word of caution, before you start celebrating the toll delay, hold on here. Waiting another year could mean the toll rates are even higher when they do start up. These are the 4 tolling scenarios that the commissions voted to review through that toll revenue study. They map out different toll rates depending on things like how much revenue needs to be raised and how much the toll should increase each year. They include some placeholder toll prices from $1.55 to $4.71. Depending on the scenario. But the tolling delay ultimately is likely to change that.
You'll notice that all of these numbers, each of the scenario in the upper left, it says $2026. So right now, one of the first things that the Bi-State Toll Subcommittee is going to be dealing with is with tolls shifted out from 26 to 27 opening day. what does that mean for the initial rates?
That's $1.55 to $4.70 one way, to clarify. And keeping the starting toll rates the same would lead to a 2% drop in revenue, they explained. They proposed making up that gap by hiking the starting toll rates by 5 cents. So depending on which scenario they ultimately pick, now we'd be looking at a minimum of at least $1.60 and a maximum of up to $4.75 one way to cross the current bridge starting in spring 2027. Once the tolling study is finished and the 4 scenarios are refined, there will be a public comment period probably about a year from now before the commissions set the finalized toll rates, so you'll have a chance to weigh in. But no need to wait a full year. We'd love to hear your thoughts right now. Are you relieved to see the tolls delayed to 2027? What do you think about those placeholder prices? Would all of this affect your decisions on how often you cross the bridge? Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. To Congress now, where the Northwest Democratic lawmakers are continuing to make it clear that they're unhappy with decisions made by the Trump administration. This week, during a Senate Appropriations Committee meeting, both Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley and Washington Senator Patty Murray laid into FBI Director Kash Patel. Patel, for his part, had little patience for either of them. Merkley asked about people being deported and whether they're owed due process as the Constitution requires.
It's a question also of law.
But your position is that every one of those individuals is by constitutional right afforded due process. I don't know the answer to that. I'm telling you.
You haven't read the Constitution?
It
says all persons.
I've got it right here. But what you're saying is that every single one of the illegals that was sent down to El Salvador is supposed to be given due process pursuant.
Yeah, that's what the Constitution says. It says no person.
It doesn't say that.
It does say no person. Yeah, I'll encourage you to read it. Because it's also been affirmed by the Supreme Court repeatedly.
Merkley wants Patel to open an FBI investigation into the deportations.
It concerns me that you're not familiar with the core concept of due process applying to all persons as written in black and white in the Constitution.
As the first public defender who's ever served at the FBI as its director, I am more aware of due process than any predecessor in my seat. You are delineating between removal proceedings and criminal acts. My job is to investigate criminal acts. That's what we do.
You are aware that the Fifth Amendment refers to taking away liberty, and when people are arrested on the street, detained and sent out of the country, that their liberty has been taken away.
Senator, that is a constitutional question that you are asking me to answer. It's not for me to answer.
The question has already been answered by the Supreme Court that they're protected. Therefore, it's a violation of law, and it's your responsibility to open an investigation. And you're saying today you will not do so?
I am not the agency involved in removal proceedings. That is a different branch of government.
Washington Senator Patty Murray claimed the FBI is being used to carry out President Trump's political wishes.
You've reportedly placed FBI employees responsible for investigation January 6 cases on leave. Is that keeping up your promise of no politicization, no retribution?
It is, because that's wildly inaccurate. Let me tell you what the FBI has done since I got there. 8,276 federal arrests, to 820 kilograms seized of fentanyl. That's enough to kill 250,000 people. Over 3,000 firearms seized, 350 gang cases, 3,000 cases against violent criminals.
That's not my question. We know that you...
Well, you asked if I was weaponizing the FBI, and I am not. I'm giving you the hard, concrete examples of the men and women putting handcuffs on bad people, doing harm to our children and innocent Americans. I do not see weaponization.
You have placed on leave FBI employees responsible for the investigation of January 6th. That sounds political to me.
I have not placed anyone on leave who has not violated their ethical obligation or their oath to the Constitution.
So if they were investigating January 6th, you believe they were violating an ethical obligation?
Nope. I think the common theme here is you putting words in my mouth, and I'm not going to tolerate it, nor will the men and women of the FBI.
This was a hearing that was supposed to be about the FBI's budget, which is facing cuts under the Trump administration. They did eventually talk about the budget, which featured yet another back and forth with Senator Murray.
This hearing is being held without the FBI's fiscal year 2025 spend plan and a full budget request for fiscal year 2026. The spend plan is required by law. It was due to Congress over a week ago. We have not yet seen it. That is really absurd. The FBI is our nation's leading law enforcement agency, a budget of $10.7 billion. It is critical that we understand how you are spending taxpayer dollars. So, Director Patel, when should we expect this FY25 spend plan for the FBI? Have you seen it? Have you reviewed it? When will we get it?
I'll get you an answer, ma'am. I don't have a timeline on that.
It was due last week by law.
I understand.
And your answer is you just understand. You're not going to follow the law?
My answer is that I am following the law, and I'm working with my interagency partners to do this and get you the budget that you are required to have.
And you have no timeline?
No.
Back here at home, leaders from across the Portland metro area met today to discuss updating the region's homelessness response action plan. Members on the steering and oversight committee say the plan has been plagued by a lack of objectives. Several leaders, including Mayor Keith Wilson, voiced a shared concern: too much conversation and not enough clarity. What's missing, they say, are concrete goals, timelines, and measurable results.
We're talking a lot about activity versus outcome. And without an outcome, you don't know that mission or where you're headed.
While some cautioned against prematurely setting rigid goals, others argued that a lack of direction has historically led to stagnation and disjointed efforts. Others couldn't even describe the end goals or what problems were being discussed.
After listening to this, I can't quite articulate what it is we're trying to solve. And what I would like to hear when we do these in the future is a statement from, here's the end state, here's what we want to get to. Because right now, this sounds like a whole lot of people are convening with a whole lot of people to talk about a whole lot of things that could be a possible whole lot of options. And I have no idea what the hell we just talked about.
The takeaway from the meeting: leaders want a roadmap, not just a recap. That includes key performance indicators, defined objectives, and regular accountability. Mayor Wilson also made an emotional plea, describing the homelessness crisis as deeply personal and increasingly urgent.
A few weeks ago, my morning as mayor began with the discovery of bones in the remnants of a burnt homeless encampment. The police told me they had not yet established how long her body had lain there, undiscovered. Investigation into whether her death was a tragedy or a crime will take time. As Sky will attest, we are recovering bodies weekly, and these are the reports I'm greeted with when I arrive at work.
Mayor Wilson urged the committee to act swiftly and hold themselves accountable for meeting shelter expansion goals. But how do they plan to do it? The city of Portland has committed to adding 1,500 shelter beds by December 1st of this year. The county, another 1,000 beds by the end of this year. Last week, Mayor Wilson and Oregon Governor Tina Kotek also proposed removing all system development charges for 3 years or until 5,000 housing units are built, whichever comes first. SDCs are fees that the city collects from developers to cover the cost of expanding infrastructure to accommodate new buildings.
We're going to flood the market. We're going to build housing of all income levels. We're going to increase vacancy, and we're going to reduce the cost.
The mayor also said he wants to unlock what he says are more than 200,000 empty bedrooms across Portland that could be rented out affordably. And he actually went a step further and described what he means by affordable.
$700 to $800 places to rent with only about $340 to $400 to move in instead of your first and last month's rent, which often costs $4,000 when we try and provide the dignity of housing.
The region's updated homelessness action plan is expected to be reviewed and finished in October. Leaders say they hope it brings the structure and urgency the system needs. They've been relying on a lot of hope over the past number of years in this regard. We're going to be watching. Up next on The Story, an Oregon mayor ousted by city council, charged with a crime and now reinstated? The dramatic power struggle in a small coastal town took yet another wild turn this week. Details when The Story returns. More than 2 years after the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, accused killer Brian Koberger is set to face trial this summer. Tonight, Dateline brings us a special report looking into the case, revealing new details that have never been reported before, including video, photographic, and digital evidence that investigators say track Koberger's movements. Keith Morrison brings us a preview.
Moscow, Idaho, where Maddie Mogan, Haley Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were murdered in November of 2022. All 4 had been stabbed to death. With the trial of accused killer Brian Koberger now just 12 weeks away, it's the crime no one can forget. In the 2 years since our last report, we have learned things, heard and seen things from sources with direct knowledge of the evidence, sources we trust, and reported here for the first time. What happened in that house? Why 4 victims? Why any? How will his attorneys defend Brian Koberger with the death penalty hanging over his head? One terrible, terrible night in a small college town.
Dateline special on the University of Idaho murder investigation, The Terrible Night on King Road, airs tonight at 9, right here on KGW. About a month ago, a wild scene played out at a city council meeting in Waldport, a small town on the Oregon coast. That's former Mayor Heidi Lambert in blue being escorted out of the meeting by sheriff's deputies. City council had voted her out of office a week before, but she showed up to take her seat anyway. Lambert was charged with disorderly conduct, but earlier this week, the Lincoln County District Attorney dropped that charge. And late Thursday, we learned that Lambert has been temporarily reinstated as mayor while her legal battle against the city plays out. Last night was supposed to be the first city council meeting since she was escorted out, but the city canceled the meeting after learning the charge against her was dropped. The district attorney says there isn't enough evidence to charge Lambert with a crime simply for being at a meeting, and that there is a question about whether the city council can legally vote Lambert out, writing, although the city charter appears to allow removal of the elected mayor through a city council vote, it's unclear whether this provision in the city charter is constitutional. But when it comes to last night's council meeting being canceled, which happened before Lambert's reinstatement, Waldport City Manager Dan Cutter told us he postponed the meeting for 2 weeks because so many people were upset with Lambert's ousting in the first place.
You know, based on the messaging that we got from the district attorney's release, it became clear to me that the amount of support we were going to be able to get from the sheriff's office if we did have disruptions in the meeting was not sufficient to prevent, until there was an actual altercation, it wasn't going to be able to keep the meeting civil. We were literally advised that if the mayor repeated the same performance that she did last time, that we were to allow her to sit up at the dais and just ignore her. That doesn't make sense from anybody's standpoint.
Cutter says his staff members have been accosted in public and harassed online. We reached out to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. They say they're not aware of any credible threat to Waldport staff or elected officials.
They would rather shut down the meeting in fear. I mean, literally, they're saying it's because of safety, because the police, the sheriff's department said they wouldn't arrest me again. And that's a sad day for democracy.
We asked City Manager Dan Cutter about the mayor being reinstated. He said the city has no comment. From isolation in Astoria to viral fame on the Pacific, coming up, the story of one man chasing freedom, leaving his entire life behind, except for his furry friend. That's next, when the story returns. An Oregon man and his cat are going viral on social media, documenting their sailing trip across the Pacific Ocean. He was working a corporate job when a customer came in and they started talking about sailing. He said it was his dream, so the customer asked, "What are you doing here?" The next day, he quit his job, liquidated his 401k, and bought a sailboat. Devin Haskins has the story.
My name is Oliver. I work a corporate job at a tire shop. I absolutely hate this life.
The journey to the ocean for Oliver Widger started months ago.
And I'm going to sail around the world for the rest of my life until I die. This is the start of my journey.
The Clackamas High grad chased his dream and bought a sailboat.
Let's add the oil.
He spent several months in Astoria fixing his boat up to get it ready for the journey of his lifetime.
Got to the coast and then it spent the 5 months not speaking to a single soul except for my cat.
His cat is Phoenix, a 7-year-old feline that he rescued from a dumpster, who's now his first mate.
I don't know. I think I love her more than I love any human, you know? She's my best friend. And this is day 1
On April 30th,
of crossing the Pacific Ocean
Oliver
and sailing from Oregon to Hawaii.
just him, his cat Phoenix,
And there's the front of the boat and absolutely
in the open waters of the ocean.
nothing. The only rules are what Mother Nature makes. And I like that.
This journey is not just about sailing.
And I keep doing my rounds and making sure everything's working. And it's working. But my God, we're having a great time.
It's about living the life that he wants to live,
Welcome to day 4.
and without the constraints of a corporate job.
I just reflected a lot on life, and I was like, well, I don't want to, this sucks. I don't want to do this and then have an impending doom looming over my head.
That impending doom, he mentions, a potentially paralyzing condition affecting his spine. 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with Klippel-Feil syndrome.
And so my cervical spine looks like somebody who's over 115 years old. All of my vertebrae there's no discs in between them, and they're all fused and deformed, and it's all just a big mess. Welcome to day 3, sailing alone across the Pacific Ocean.
He's documenting his trip on social media.
What happened was
the lows,
rudder quadrant,
like a rudder failure on day 6 that almost tipped his boat.
The boat was rocking, literally like this. It was the scariest moment of my entire life. I saw dolphins.
And the highs.
Which is amazing. Dolphin right there. Oh my God. Oh.
Since making the decision to quit his job and sail to Hawaii,
Look at him.
he's amassed over 1 million followers across his social media channels.
So I went viral on literally day 1 of the passage. So it's just been I don't even know, man. And then I started, I was fighting for my life for 5 days while going viral and stuff. So I haven't had time to really process it because I've just been so busy and just trying to figure things out.
And he has plenty of nautical miles to figure it all out
Things are looking good.
while enjoying what lies ahead.
It's everything. It's every single emotion you could imagine on all ends of the spectrum. It's the most amazing, scary, beautiful, terrifying, all of it packed into one bundle. It's awesome. It's really cool. So yeah, there's that for you guys. Thank you for watching.
That's Devin Haskins reporting there. Oliver has about 2 more weeks, he thinks, until he gets to Hawaii. As of this morning, he had about 1,600 miles left. He plans to stay in Hawaii for 6 months and then sail to French Polynesia. If you want to follow along, search for Sailing with Phoenix on social media. That is the end of our show for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Timbers 360 is coming your way next. Blair will be back with you on Monday, but in the meantime, have a great Friday night and don't forget about Mother's Day on Sunday. Make it a special one. Good night. See you later.